Hi, and welcome to my presentation for HDCC 671, Design Strategy for Global Context. This semester the major project was in regards to the idea of counterfeiting. Now just a quick bit about my background before I start, if you'll indulge me. I'm a freelance designer, and for the past 10 years I've been involved in designing and building handmade custom bicycles. And in all honesty, when I started my little bike company, one of the things I was looking forward to is not having to think too much about IPR and counterfeiting. There was on occasion a couple of issues regarding both of these things. I recall quite a few times on various forums where potential customers would ask around for ideas, tubing and specifications, and geometry which they could then take to their frame building to make. There were other instances when potential customers saw things that they liked on one customer's bike and then wanted another frame builder to do the same. But aside from that and a few other lengthy instances, which I won't really go into, I largely managed to avoid issues regarding IPR during my 10-year stint, which leads us to the current project, counterfeiting. Now, in all honesty, I wasn't really looking forward to this, as there was many aspects of global design I was more interested in. For me, IPR is something a little bit too close to the bone, because I know the effort it takes to try and turn the ideas into reality by spending your own money on it, and sometimes every waking hour starting a new business around an idea. So for me, this entire course has really been one about de-shackling myself from the notions of the idea and towards a more holistic collaborative approach, where implementation and iteration and learning from that is the main focus. What it has done, however, is allowed me to research things that I've known from experience to back these ideas up, but also to learn new things and new ways in which IPR is being enacted in the modern world. However, the overriding conclusion I've reached after all of my experience, my 20 years in the design industry and 13 weeks of research, is simply that it cannot be stopped. In all honesty, I'm not even completely convinced that the traditional pro-status quo system of patents, trademarks and copyrights is the way forward. There's numerous examples of the implementation of successful ideas outside of it. Let's take a quick look at some of the points as to why I believe anti-counterfeit strategies just don't work, and why they're even less relevant for the area that I'm primarily interested in, that of the inventor and lean startup. Let's run through some points quickly. Okay, the first one and the big one is China, and the main issue here is that 75% of all counterfeit goods in the world originate from China, and that China isn't a signatory to any counterfeit treaty. China knows that their industry is heavily vested in the counterfeit industry for income, but they're also very quick to enforce their own IPR outside of their jurisdiction, such as when it came to the Beijing Olympics and the logos and the branding around that. The legal system in China is also very immature, causing frustration and delay for companies that attempt to get restitution. Small and medium enterprises are notoriously underprotected. While 80% rate IP protection is very important, 75% are under-resourced and underprotected. And even those heavily invested in the system, such as James Dyson of Dyson vacuum cleaner fame, suggests that defending patents could cost companies up to $3 million. There are other issues such as shaming purchases, and collective cultures have little effect culturally, as ideas are not owned by the individual, and conversely in individualist nations there's very little social backlash to buying knockoffs. In fact, sometimes the saving money is a badge of honour. There's also increasing awareness that many luxury branded items cost only marginally more to make than the counterfeit ones do, and offer very little value proposition. Western society is also very heavily invested in the notions of aspirationalism, or colloquially what I like to call going broke appearing rich. And people are so far removed from how the manufacturing process, how things are made, and that the true cost of manufacturing items is actually borne by somebody else rather than the sell price. And also, the predominantly only large companies are really targeted by counterfeiters, so consumer empathy is very low, i.e. they can afford it, they brought it on themselves because they're so expensive, etc. But wait, there's more. And there's a whole raft of other issues that are involved in the manufacturing process, such as the fact that OEM producers often produce counterfeits alongside originals. OEMs heavily invest in technology to the degree nowadays that brands often can't, because OEMs are producing for numerous brands simultaneously. And as counterfeiting is seen as an uptown problem, a large part of the business sector is not interested in it. Lean startup principles place value in the learning process and the research part of design rather than the product. There's a whole raft of other ideas, and there's a whole lot more of them, but I think you basically get the point. The bottom line is that we've never not had counterfeiting, and it doesn't look like this is going to stop anytime soon. And I'm sorry to bore you all with that, but really, the point had to be made. I mean, obviously, the points that I've made are based on evidence, and they're referenced in my end-of-term paper, which is why I haven't referenced them there, and I've realised I've skimmed over them. But if there's any specific questions, perhaps you can raise them at the end, and I'll do my best to elucidate them. However, from where I'm sitting, the Emperor truly has no clothes in this respect, and my position is that anti-counterfeiting strategies are too complex, multi-jurisdictional, with a populace that doesn't really care, and the main offenders whose GDP is reliant on the continued production of gold anyway, means that the problem is really one for the multinational corporations to worry about, and for the rest of us to, well, not to. And it's a problem whose major barrier to entry in the first place is money, and small companies should be spending their resources wisely by using lean entrepreneurial techniques, design thinking, collaborative innovation to deliver insanely great products and services. But how? And I believe the way forward is being shown by startups, and especially by software developers and those in e-commerce. All of the major and minor software companies that have based their uptake model on engaging customers and not exclusionary protectionist policies are the ones doing well. And this has led to an upsurge in numerous open source systems, such as Linux, Firefox, Creative Commons, and wikis as a way of engaging users and engaging enthusiasts to be involved in the process. Now, this is not really my area of expertise, so I'm sure there are literally dozens of more open source systems, but companies are realizing that it's engaging with the user that generates real traction and emotional investment in product or service, and being too precious about what that brand, product or service is going to be is counterproductive. According to Fournier and Avery, in the age of social media, the brand is often an unwanted intrusion, as it was created to link people in collective conversational networks and not sell branded products. Brands that engage the best with the collective are those that, to some degree, secede ownership of the brand, or at least embrace some of its dynamic and amorphous nature. After all, a brand is what people say you are, not what you think you are. So I've talked a little bit about how the corporation or the brand is its own worst enemy when it comes to anti-counterfeit strategy. So what are other institutions doing about the issue? Well, generally, they're industry groups that are there to support the status quo and the current model of IPR. And there's a heap of them, but these are the main ones. These institutions are there essentially to lobby governments to release reports and doing most of the things that you would expect industry groups to do. The ACG in the UK released a pretty hefty 64-page report, which I had the displeasure of trawling through my research, and it raises some good points, and is generally a fairly good educational piece, but like with the others I've read, it slips up with unsubstantiated claims and thinly veiled propaganda. Such as this, where they slam a professor and use what they claim are unsubstantiated claims, but then themselves provide no evidence to the contrary. And many of the documents that I've read suffer from this. Now I'm definitely running out of time now. So I'll skip to the catalyst that brought me to the conclusion that there was a glaring hole in the system to promote IPR and the creative industries on a grassroots level, and that a framework could be developed upon which to base it. Now, there are two major festivals for the promotion of ideas in Australia, AG Ideas and the Festival of Dangerous Ideas. There are more such as Design Week and various others, but these are the main ones. And what struck me as I looked at these two preeminent festivals and 37 other institutions, awards and advocacy groups, is that there's nothing on a grassroots ground floor level promoting ideas or new ways to generate and test IP. There's nothing for students and startups to get information about these things, and there's nothing that involves pounding the pavement activism. The closest thing to this I found was OccupyDesign.com, which is a group providing Creative Commons design solutions for the Occupy movement. So quite early in the piece, after I got over having to spend an entire semester on something I really had little interest in revisiting, I decided to look into the Occupy movement as a social model and design a document to act as a catalyst for the idea upon which further development could be made, and from which it could be run with by whoever decides to take up the mantle. And this is the social movement that I call Idea Buccaneers. Now I'll start with two caveats. Firstly, I'm a designer, I'm not a social engineer. I'm also not the guy on the top of the hill waving the flag. So this document is not for me. It's for leader type personalities to be inspired by and take hold of and run with. It's a very loose graphic framework upon which to base a movement. It's designed to be modified and changed by anybody. It's Creative Commons. It's not a static document. It's just as much a guide on what not to do as it is what to do. Within the guide, there's pretty much whatever information I could think to assist in getting people interested and involved. And it starts with a broad framework and an emotive call to arms statement. This is followed by what I like to call really manifesto-light. It's really just a few pages that are still very emotive rather than academic, but it outlines what the problem actually is and asks people what are they going to do about it. From there, I suggest some simple merchandising, in this case, good old-fashioned stickers, but obviously, anything that sort of promotes the brand and promotes the movement, in an effective way, as a designer anyway, is worth investigating early on. And from there are numerous pages of resources from industry groups to festivals to government groups and other resources. I mean, obviously you could write a book on this stuff, but, a start has been made. And to be honest, this sort of information would definitely suit a database hanging off a website better than it would a document. And yeah, so as a designer, I've been a bit indulgent in the things that I know, such as colour psychology and semiotics. But, this is the thing that I know. And again, I'm not an activist. So anyway, that is the main gist of things and how I got to where I am. There's more information in the document itself and also in my research paper. And in terms of the design document, as I continue to grow up page by page, but the branding, the look and the feel are all there, just waiting for some modern day Malcolm McLaren to turn it into the next punk or whatever it turns out to be. So thank you for your time.